So you decided to raise your own meat, but you're not sure if it's going to be quail or rabbit, and you can't do both. Which one do you do? We're going to talk about that today. Hello everyone, I'm Chris from Rusted Rabbit, and welcome back to the channel. So we're going to go over the pros and cons for rabbit versus quail to help you decide which one would be better for you, because it really kind of just depends on preference. There's not a yes or no answer on which one being the superior choice. So firstly, your preferences. White meat versus dark meat. Rabbits are all white meat, okay? Quail, there's some different species that people claim that are white or at least lighter, but really by and large it's a dark meat. So you kind of have to figure out which one is, and maybe that has nothing to do with your decision making, but just know that it's white meat versus dark meat, and that is part of the decision making. Okay. Now, secondly, the conversion rate. So if you take your live weight, you weigh it, and then you go ahead and dress it out. By the time you skin it, you gut it, you do all the things, and you just have the meat ready to consume. That conversion rate is very different, believe it or not. For rabbit, it's about 54%, 56%. Kind of depends on what you're saving, things like that, and I guess who's doing the dressing out and how thorough they are. But for the quail, I can get almost to about 70% of that total live weight converted into addressed weight. So you get a better percentage of meat salvaged for consumption when you go with quail. Now, what about the growth rate? Okay, how quickly can we go from an idea to something that we can put on our dinner table? So for rabbits, that's going to be longer, right? So you're going to have about, after a rabbit breeds, it's going to be about 31 days on average. Then after that, you have these little babies, and you got to wait until they grow up to get big enough to harvest. So that's typically between 10 and 12 pounds. I'm sorry, 10, 12 weeks. There's a big difference between 10 and 12 weeks. So 10 and 12 weeks typically gives you between 2.5 and 3.5 pounds. Here are two rabbits, one harvested respectfully at those times, and you can see there's a pretty big difference between 2.5 and 3.5 pounds. Now for quail, you're talking, you get an egg, and you get an egg pretty much every day from a hen. And as long as that egg is fertilized, it takes about 17 days in the incubator to become a little hatchling, okay? And once it hatches and you have a little baby, from there, 7 weeks later, it's big enough to harvest, okay? You can continue to feed it, get it a little bit bigger, but really it becomes pretty quickly cost prohibitive because those little things can eat, man, and they go through your feed faster than you can imagine. So, but about 7 weeks after it's born, you're harvest ready, okay? Typical weight for a 7-week-old chick for a Coturnix is going to be between 5.5 to 6.5 ounces. Okay, and you do the conversion rate. Basically, that works out to be about 3 birds per pound. So you can look right here. This baggie here was about 1.5 pounds of dressed quail, up to this 2.5 pounds of dressed rabbit, and so there's 5 birds in this bag, and it's still not as much as this one rabbit. So I guess the message here is that rabbits take a little bit longer, but you're going to get a lot more meat per rabbit. But if you can imagine, I have, 50 or 60 quail of breeder quail, so I get a couple of 2 to 3 dozen eggs per day. I throw those all in an incubator. 3 weeks later, I've got almost 100 birds that are ready to grow up and be harvested in about 7 weeks. So it kind of depends on which one you kind of want to pursue. Now, I will say for dependability on the breeding, sometimes rabbits just have no desire. They don't need a certain time of the month or anything like that. It's just, they just sometimes, I'm not interested. And then you're kind of stuck. Really, you don't have that problem with quail. So you're going to get a pretty consistent fertility rate on your eggs. And then it comes down to just, what's your hatch rate. And that depends on humidity levels and temp levels and things like that in your incubator. But a very tangible difference between the two, obviously, you can eat the eggs, okay? I don't care how many commercials you've seen during Easter, bunnies don't lay eggs. Those ones that look like little chocolate eggs, those aren't eggs. Don't eat those, okay? But basically, you have a choice. It's two selections of protein when you have quail. For rabbit, it's really, is it going to make the ultimate sacrifice for you or not? There's no eggs. Poop. Let's talk poop. Okay, so for manure, you have a hot cold discussion. You know, they both equally make just a ton of manure. I say equally. That's not true. I guess I have a whole covey of birds making a whole lot of manure, and really one rabbit can come up with the same amount. So I guess per capita, you're gonna have more manure for a rabbit than you would per quail. That being said, you're not going to have one quail. You're probably going to have a ton of them, whereas you can only have a handful of rabbits. Um, the manure discussion becomes important because the cold manure, it's ready to put in your garden right away. You could use it if you're also organically farming. Um, that being said, you can get rid of it a lot easier and quicker. Throw it in your yard, till it up, put it in your garden. For quail manure, you need to compost that, or it's gonna burn your plants. Also, the smell. You know, quail poop is high in ammonia. It is, people who raise it in their garage or a room or something, like, good lord, I can't imagine that. They are just really smelly. The rabbits don't have any smell to their manure. Now their urine is different. That pee can stink, man. But the poop, it's by and large, it's pretty odorless. Now, some things to think about, kind of intangible, but certainly they become something you need to weigh. Waste, feed waste. Quail, man, I've tried PVC pipes with little holes in them and containers and just all different kinds of mechanisms to try and limit the amount of waste, but they can find a way to waste food. It's just incredible, and food gets expensive. It's about 21 bucks for a bag that's about a 40-pound bag. So you can go through it pretty quick, especially if you have a lot of them. Especially if you have babies that you're trying to grow out as fast as possible, you can go through quite a bit of feed. Okay. Another thing to think about: rabbits chew everything. Quail will make a mess because they're gross. they poop everywhere. They climb on everything, but they don't chew anything. Rabbits will chew. They get bored, especially anything wood or plastic. They'll just gnaw on it, and they'll destroy it. Rabbits can also become friendly, or they can become unfriendly, but they'll get used to you, and at some point you can reach in their cage, you could pet them, you could handle them, you could do different things. Quail, I don't care how often I've been around them, the closest I've been to being friendly with them is that I'll reach in to get some eggs, and maybe it's like just freezing cold outside, and they don't want to move because they're uncomfortable, so they'll just sit there and just like let you kind of move them out of the way. But you're not going to be able to develop a relationship with a quail where it kind of flies to you and sings on your shoulder like Snow White or anything like that. So and then finally, this sounds kind of funny, but sexing the animals, right? To understand if it's a male or female, so you know whether to cull it to try and keep the ratio correct, or to try and kind of harvest it versus trying to grow your breeding stock. The Coternyx quail are very easy to recognize after only a few weeks because of their breast feathers if it's a male or female. For rabbits, I've been doing this a couple of years now, and look, I'm not embarrassed to say, when they're older, the anatomy comes out. It's very easy to see, but when they're only several weeks old, man, I've tried every YouTube video. I've had a mentor help me. It's not as easy as you think it should be. I've gotten the hang of it to where I can probably tell the 6 to 8 week mark. But even then, I have marginal confidence. So sexing is not as easy. So that is something to consider. All right, guys. So you can see, there's no answer on, well, this one's better than the other. It just kind of depends on your preference. How much of these are you going to be eating? What's your preference on what kind of meat? The preparation, quite honestly, harvesting a rabbit, takes like 10 minutes to clean it out, and then you're ready to go, and that can feed a whole family of 4. Quail, every person at the table is probably going to need at least 2 or 3, and it's just, depending on whether you pluck them or you skin them, or what, how you harvest them, how you prep them. It can become quite a bit of work pretty quickly. So now, it's also delicious meat. It's very tender. There's a lot of things you can do with it. So you kind of have to answer that question for yourself after all the things being considered. But for me, I do both because I can. Okay, so hopefully this video was useful for you. If so, please pass it along and support us as best you can. Subscribe. Watch our cooking videos. I just harvested a handful of quail because I was culling the males, so I will be putting out a quail recipe pretty soon here. But if nothing else, God bless and stay safe out there.